What's up guys, Andre here, and today I'd like to take a look at how to implement drag and drop in React. I'm going to be using this very popular react-dnd library, which uses the HTML5 drag and drop specification under the hood. The documentation is pretty good, however I feel like there is a lack of basic examples to help you get familiar with how to use the API. So let's go ahead and create a few basic examples. So the first one is sort of a trash can implementation. So we would just take these items and drag it into a target and they would delete. And the second one is taken straight from the documentation, where we can just have a list and we can drag to sort them as we please. So let's go ahead and get started. So here's our starting point. It is just a create React application with some boilerplate, which we'll go over right now. So I have the state for all the items, and each item just has an ID and a name. And down here, I'm just iterating over them and rendering them out. And we have a dedicated item component here for it, and it's just rendering out the name based on the item that's coming in. So you can see we're passing in an item right here. Also, we have this target component, which is just a basic component, and this is where we'll be dragging in our items, and obviously some CSS here. Cool. So for this library to work, we need to define three things. We need to define a context which wraps our entire application and tells our app that things are draggable. And then we need to specify which items are draggable and which ones are targets. So things that are draggable are called sources, and things that are targets are called targets. So the first thing we should do is install the packages. So I'm going to install these two. So install this one and also this too. Just going to paste that in. Okay, that's done. And now we have to wrap our entire application in a context. So let's see where that is here. So let me just import these two things first. So up here, just do that. And now there are a few ways we can work with this library. And the usage is specified here for ES7. They use decorators, which you can use and which I actually like using. But for this demo, we'll stick with the non-decorator way. So we have to click on ES6. So let me just grab this and paste that in our code. So down here, instead of export default app, we export the context and the app here. Okay. And I'm getting an error. Let me just restart let me just do another npm install. This happens very often. Not sure why. Okay, let me npm start again. Okay, so that's fixed. Cool. Okay, let's start with the items or the things that we want to drag. So we have to, if you go into the documentation, define them as sources. So let's go ahead and take care of this first. So grab this. And then for the item, let's just, not sure why this is called preview, it should be item. And I'm going to paste that in, and let's call it item. Okay, now here are the parameters it takes. The type has to match the target that it's going into. So let's just hard code it for now. We can make it an object if you want, but for the purposes of this demo, we'll just hard code it a string. So we'll call it item, and we'll also call the target item as well. Spec is right here, a JavaScript object for allowed methods on it, and collect is this. It just adds the ability to inject props into your component. So let's go ahead and start with spec. So back into our code, spec is actually called item source in my code. So let's change that. And let's go ahead and define that. So before the class, let's do const item source equals, define a method in here called begin drag. It takes in the props. And all we want is a representation of this item being dragged. So in our case, we just want to return the props.item. And we can also specify an end drag. It takes in the props, monitor, and a component. And what this allows us to do is call a function on the parent component, and it can handle what happens when we let go after we finish dragging. So we'll define a handle drop method, and we'll pass it the item ID, because eventually we want to delete. And we'll define that later on. Let me just continue on with this. So we have the item source. I have to import this. So let me just import drag source from react.dnd. Okay. And now let's work on this collect function. So it's a function, collect, takes in these two parameters, and this is going to return an object which we need. I'll show you in a sec. Drag source and connect drag preview. And is dragging is monitor dot is dragging. Okay. Let me just save that. And before we render, I'm just going to grab a few things that I need so we can make this item draggable. So const is dragging, connect drag source and item from the props. Actually, that should go inside the render. And instead of this, let me just comment this out. We're now going to return connect drag source. And we can do item, okay, and it's not working in here, so class name equals item. Let me just close that out, and I can just render out that item. So item.name. See if this works. Okay, let me try dragging now. And it's draggable now. Yeah, that's not working yet because we didn't define that. But to prove to you that it's working, right here, for the begin drag, we can just console log something. And there it is, cool. Now, if you want this item to sort of disappear as you're dragging it, we can make use of opacity. So this, and we can just check if we're dragging. So if we are dragging, then opacity should be 0, i.e. it should disappear, but if we're not, it should be 1. And now in here, we can make use of that style. So style equals opacity. And now it should disappear as we drag. Cool. Let's define the handle drop method on the parent component, just so we don't get that error anymore. So if we go back to app.js, for the item, we can just pass in a prop called handle drop. And for now, it takes in an ID. And eventually we want to call a function called this.delete item and pass in the ID. So let's go ahead and define that. Let's just define it for now and console log something. So right here, delete item ID arrow function, and let's just do console log deleting ID plus ID. Okay, see if this works. Awesome. Okay, now let's work on the target. So if we go into the docs, we need to go to ES6 and just paste this into our target code. So back to our code, target, let me just put this in, and it should be toolbar. Sorry, I'm not sure why it's called toolbar. It should be called target. So let's set this to item as well, because that's what we named our source. For spec, we're not going to do anything here, so we can just pass in an empty object. And for collect, we can define that up here. So again, function collect, connect, monitor. And this is going to return a few things that we need. Connect drop target is connect drop target. Hovered is monitor.is over, and item is monitor.get item. And similar to what we did in the source, let me just grab some things here. Connect drop target, hovered, and item from this.props. And I think that should do it. So okay, I have to import the drop target. From react-dnd. So this should work. Okay. So now we want to make sure that this item gets dropped into the proper target, because this is firing right now no matter where we drop it. See? So we only want it to fire when it gets into this target. So if we go back into our item.js, up where we have this end drag, we can do a check here. So we can do something like this. If not monitor.did drop, then we can just do an early return. Now we should only delete once we drag into this target. So if I just do this, nothing happens. Cool. But if I do this, well, that didn't work. Let's try again. Oh yes, sorry, I forgot to change this. So let me just comment this out. And now we have to return the connect drop target. And let me just grab this. And I can just leave this like this. And now this should work. So again, if I don't drop it, nothing should happen. So let's clear this. Nothing should happen, okay. But if I drop it in here, it should delete. Awesome. Okay, cool. Now let's make this background change once we hover over it. So we can just do something similar to what we did with opacity. So right here, I can do a const background color equals hovered. If it's hovered, then we want it to be light green. But if it's not hovered, then we want it to be white. And now down here, we can just set the style. So background is background color. See if that works. Okay, cool. Awesome. Now let's just implement that deleting of the item. So back into our app.js, we can implement that in here. So I'm going to do a set state. And that's going to take in the previous state. And I'm going to grab the current items because I'm going to mutate them. I'm going to find the index of the ID being passed in. So items.findIndex. Item. So item.id equals ID. And then I'm going to just splice it out. Items.splice the index and 1. And then we're just going to return the items. And that should delete. Just put a semicolon here. See, awesome. And everything is working. You see how this is shrinking? Let's just set a min height on that. So I have it here. I just want to show you guys. So if we set a min height, that should not shrink beyond 200 pixels. Cool. Okay, now let's work on this other demo here. It's just a list which you can drag and drop and sort. So I'm just going to copy the example, and it's not going to be custom. The example is actually in TypeScript. So we'll change it to just use normal JavaScript. Okay, so back to our code. So I'm just going to comment this out for now. These two components, just so I have space. I'm just going to comment this out, and I'll comment this out. Sorry, it should be all of this. And I'm just going to make a new one here for the card container. I think that's what I called it. Okay. So for these items, for these sortable items, I'm going to name them cards. And we're going to have new state for cards. And this is taken straight from the source. And it's just an array of cards. So let's go ahead and render those right in our card container. And this is also taken straight from the source. So it's just a card component, and it's passing in all these props. So let's go ahead and make that card component. Okay. So this is the container. You don't need that. And this is the card. I'm just going to grab everything here, and we'll just remove all the TypeScript as we go along. So make a new component, card.js. Okay. So this is TypeScript, so we don't need this. This is going to be the style of the cards. This is also TypeScript. We don't need this. And this is all the logic that happens once you're hovering over and dragging cards and sorting them. So I'm going to delete these because these are TypeScript as well. And this, again, this is just sorting logic. We don't need any of this because this is specific to TypeScript. Same with this and this. And we'll remove this from decorators in a second. We'll leave it for now because we're going to make use of that. This is TypeScript. Since we're going to be exporting it, we don't need to export default here. This is TypeScript. We don't have to do prop types, but it's already in here, so we'll just leave it. This is TypeScript. And yeah, let's go ahead and save this. And let's import card in our app here. So let me just grab this. Card. Oops, card. Okay, now let's replace those decorators. So back in the card. So you see here, these cards are being defined as both a target and a source, which makes sense because we're dragging on top of the cards and they're sorting. So how do we define this in non-decorator form? So there's actually an example in the docs. So here on the overview, right here where it specifies higher order components and ES7 decorators. So you see an example here of a component that's both a source and a target. But if you go into ES6, you'll see that they're using a Lodash function. So we'll do the same. So let me just see how to install this particular Lodash function that we need. And let me just grab this and go into here and install it. Okay. Now we can import it. Oh, up here. Okay. And now we can use it like this. So I'm going to copy that and down here. Yeah, after the class, we can export it. And the drag source, we can just grab it from this decorator over here. So all this. And we can delete that at. We can replace this. This is just going to be the type. So we can just hard code card in here. And then let's do the same for the target. So grab this, take this out, and paste that in there. And this is going to be card. And this is TypeScript. And this is card. And we can, okay, I removed it already. Cool. Does that work? Item types. Yes, we don't need this. Okay. Okay, we have to define this move card function, and that lives on the parent component. Similar how we defined this delete item. And yeah, I didn't do that earlier. So let's go back into here. I think it's in the container. Let's look for move card. Yeah, there it is right there. So I'm going to copy that and put that into our code. So we'll put it right under delete item. Again, this is TypeScript. And they are using an immutability helper. If you look up here, they are importing it like that. I think it requires the old way of importing. So let's do that. And let's install that. Let's look for it. React immutability helper. Yeah, it's this one. So let me just install that. Okay. And cool. Save that. And looks like everything should work. Let's see if we can drag. Cannot read property cards of undefined. All right, we have to change the definition of this so we have access to this. So move card equals that and changes to an arrow function. That should work now. Let's see. And there we go. We have drag and drop. Let me just close this. See if it works. And it does. Cool. Now, note that this is actually changing the state as you drag it. So once it's here, you can't escape out. So just take note of that. So there you have it, guys. We've managed to create 2 examples of how to use this React drag and drop library. Now, this library has some limitations because it's using the HTML5 spec under the hood. For example, there's no built-in animations, although you can combine another library like React Motion to do that. Also, there's limited touch support in mobile. There are a few other really good libraries out there that support these features. I haven't used them, but it's worth taking a look if you have a specific use case. I will link them in the description below. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one. Okay, thanks. Bye.